when you were a child, did you long to sit cocooned in the woolly blanket of a cloud and gaze on the world below? Or yearn to fly, to float across the sky on angel wings? I did. Then, as now, I was doomed to disappointment, because when you try to fly, you fall, and sometimes there's no one there to catch you. I was 5 when my parents first abandoned me. A significant event abandonment. I mean, you expect your parents to protect you, to catch you when you fall. Let me take you back. An open-air swimming pool near London. It's the middle of summer, but the water is freezing. It is England after all. Can you see me there, easing myself by degrees into the icy water until the biting pain in my limbs subsides into numbness? My parents, however, are determined we should all enjoy ourselves. Rosemary, why don't you go down the water slide? Uncle Jeff will go with you. Won't you, Uncle Jeff? But I don't want to. The water slide is very high. It's a long, long way to fall, and I can't swim. Daddy will catch you at the bottom. Well, that's a little more reassuring. Daddy will catch me. So I climb up the steps to the water slide with Uncle Jeff, and Daddy is waiting at the bottom to catch me. He promises he will catch me. A grainy cinefilm shows me hurtling down the water slide with Uncle Jeff. The film doesn't show the sense of abandonment I felt when Daddy didn't catch me. I was underwater for a matter of seconds, but time seemed to stretch with unimaginable elasticity as I landed at the bottom of the pool and contemplated that act of treachery. Daddy didn't catch me when I fell. Nonetheless, I had stood at the top of a very high water slide and flown. Let's fast forward 4 years. A faded photograph captures a single moment in time. Me, age 9, standing beside a diving board, arms folded confidently. If you look closely, you can see the swimming badges stitched onto my bathers. Oh, I don't need Daddy to catch me now. The photographs don't show the whole story. If you'd been there, you would have seen me a few moments later, standing on the edge of their very high diving board, enjoying the warmth of the sun on my back. There is something exhilarating about looking down at others from a great height. They seem so small, so insignificant, and they don't know you're watching. You imagine you could fly. If you just took one step off the diving board, you'd be flying, flying. One small step for a girl, the lure of the void. Just take one small step. Go on now. At that moment came the cold realization that if I were looking at people down there, then equally people down there were looking up at me. They were waiting for me to go over the edge. Were they surprised that a very young girl was about to leap off a very high diving board? Were they tutting in disapproval that a child had been allowed up there on her own? Were they hoping to witness a dreadful accident while they just sat there in scarcely disguised anticipation of sirens, ambulances, and stretchers? Where was Daddy? Where was Daddy? And suddenly, confidence gave way to paralysis. I couldn't move. I wanted to beat a retreat to the back of the diving board, but I couldn't move a muscle. I couldn't turn around and edge my way back. One mistake and I'd be falling. So I just stood there and tried very hard not to look down. It must only have been a matter of minutes, but again time seemed to stretch out of shape, that a kind man helped me down. But Daddy wasn't there to rescue me. Afterwards, we laughed about it. Poor Rosemary got stuck up a diving board and Daddy wasn't there. No, he wasn't, was he? but I had stood at the edge of a very high diving board and so nearly flown. You know, I'm not the only one to have felt the lure of the void, that desperate desire to fly. Picture the scene. It's 1912. An Austrian tailor, Franz Reichelt, intends to jump off the Eiffel Tower. He's wearing this bat-sleeved overcoat that he's designed especially for the occasion. He hopes it will enable him to parachute safely to the ground. Jerky film footage shows him standing on the rail in his extraordinary attire. He takes some considerable time before mustering the nerve to jump. In truth, it's almost comical. If you didn't know it was real, you might laugh. Ah, there he goes. He takes a couple of seconds to plummet to his death. He drops like a stone and creates a massive crater in the footpath. I don't know if he screamed as he fell in his treacherous overcoat. I don't know what fragmented thoughts tumbled through his mind. I don't know if his last few seconds turned into an eternity of regret. But I do believe it took an extraordinary amount of courage to step out into the void in his bid to fly. And nobody tried to stop him. And nobody was there to cushion the fall. My parents' last betrayal was their death. Well, you can't abandon anybody more thoroughly than that. My mother died first, felled by a stroke. I couldn't conceive anything more devastating than that sudden loss. I was wrong. It was unimaginably worse when my father died a few years later, as cancer relentlessly hollowed him out. Those few months felt like years. Time slows when you're watching and waiting. And then suddenly, the coffin glides into the furnace. Afterwards, you trawl through a house full of memories, trying to decide what to keep and what to throw away. You end up watching faded cinefilms and leafing through old photographs and uncovering half-forgotten moments in time. And suddenly you're on the edge of a precipice and you're falling, and there's nobody there to catch you. On September 11th, 2001, 2 aeroplanes plowed into the World Trade Center. The images of that day are indelibly etched into the minds of all who saw them, like the falling man. Nobody says, "What falling man?" He's the falling man, even though no one can be certain of his identity. The picture we saw in the newspaper depicts a man falling to earth against the backdrop of the Twin Towers. It was so beautiful, I couldn't stop looking at it. The man falls gracefully, in perfect line with the bold vertical strokes of the towers behind him. It's a picture of remarkable geometric precision, of his effortless flight of elegance. Of course, a photograph doesn't show the whole story. It's just a snap of a moment in time of a 10-second fall. We don't see him turning ungainly somersaults, limbs flailing in panic. We don't see him bouncing with horrific force off the side of the building. We don't see the crater he would have caused on impact. 1 minute, he's at the top of the world. 10 seconds later, he's obliterated on a pavement. I wonder, did he stand on a ledge weighing the decision as Reichelt did before leaping? Or did he jump in despair in the face of certain death? Or was it an act of defiance, choosing to fly into eternity on his own terms? Did he hope someone would catch him as he fell? Did he hope to be safe in the arms of Jesus? Although fear and gravity hold us back. We want so very much to fly. But if we cannot fly, perhaps in falling we can achieve a certain momentary grace. I shall never forget that man and the unspeakable beauty of his falling.